I know I just wore this shirt on an episode, but we're covering The Nun, so stay tuned! Sacrilege! Hey y'all, welcome to Real Value, where we recap, review, rate, and evaluate all things real, all things watched. I'm Cal, your horror pal, and on today's episode, we're continuing with our Conjuring universe recap before the fourth installment comes out in September, by again doing a real telling of The Nun 2. Directed by Michael Chavez, who also directed two other Conjuring verse movies, The Curse of La Irena, two L's, so it's a Y, Llorena, and The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. The Nun 2 stars Taissa Farmiga, Bonnie Aarons, and Jonas Bloquet, all reprising their roles from the first Nun movie from 2018. The Nun 2 is a 2023 supernatural horror film that runs 110 minutes, had a budget of $38.5 million, and a box office of $269.5 million. So again, these Conjureverse films, they rake in those big bucks, and I'll say you can definitely tell with this one. The CGI and special effects are on point, which can also be attributed to its director, Michael Chavez, who is also a visual effects artist. The Nun 2 continues the story from the Nun 1, about Valak the demon whose favorite form to take is that of a nun. Sacrilege. Because he's totally doing it in an ironic hipster kind of way, just to piss off the man, God. Valak is a demon that actually takes many forms, usually of those that'll bring the most fear to its viewer. The demon nun in The Nun 2 is, like in part 1, after a powerful artifact in order to regain power it once held when it was an angel before its fall. Sister Irene is again commissioned by the church when a string of unexplained murder-suicides by church members start occurring across Europe, leading her to eventually run back into Frenchie, aka Maurice. The Nun 2 is the latest installment in the Conjuring universe franchise, but currently sits at number 3 on the timeline, having taken place after The Nun, which happened in 1952, and Annabelle Creation, which happened in 1955, though I do see some sources say that Annabelle Creation is third, having taken place in 1958. Either way, The Nun 2 takes place in 1956. The Nun 2 fell a little short with critics, scoring a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter, but the public seemed to have enjoyed it a bit. It sits at a 72% on their popcorn meter. It holds a 2.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and IMDb has it at a 5.6 out of 10. But what's the real value of the flick? Well, stay tuned till the end of this video to find out. First, let's get to our real telling of 2023's The Nun 2. Needless to say, but spoilers start now. All right, our story begins in France, 1956. A priest chastises his altar boy for being late and sends him to fetch the wine. After the service, while returning the bottle, the boy notices his soccer ball sitting strangely on a step stool. He kicks it away, watching it disappear down a dark corridor, only for it to roll back from the pitch-black doorway. A growl follows. When he kicks the ball back into the darkness, the wine bottle suddenly explodes by itself. The boy runs to warn the priest, saying someone else is there. Just then, loud thuds and growling erupt. The priest warns that this is a house of God and he's watching. The holy water nearby begins to boil until it fully evaporates. Then, from above, we see the figure of Valak, the demon nun. Everything goes dark. The priest is lifted into the air and engulfed in flames as the terrified altar boy watches. We then see a figure exit the church with the shadow of Valak appearing behind them as he walks away. Cut to our title card, The Nun 2. We transition to a group of nuns trying to free a truck from the mud. Sister Irene, our returning heroine, managed to solve that problem. Back at the convent, she finds Sister Deborah outside smoking, and she and Irene share a moment poking fun at the Reverend Mother. They open up about their pasts, and it's clear these two will be the central duo of the film. Inside, another nun recounts the legend of the Abbey of St. Carta from the first Nun film, and the tale of the demon nun Valak. The story is now treated as folklore, with no one realizing Sister Irene was the one who defeated the evil. The nun who helped is considered a mystery. They're all unaware it was Irene all along, who quietly listens nearby. Cut to another convent school hybrid where two girls are playing. They present their bully ringleader with a jar of cockroaches, which she unleashes into the head reverend mothers or head master mothers. I don't know if she's a reverend mother or not, but she's the head honcho in the school convent hybrid. And anyways, they release the cockroaches into her room while she's praying. Then we hear a scream followed by their smiles. These are the bullies. Meanwhile, Frenchie, aka Maurice from the first film, and I'm gonna use those names interchangeably, he now works at this school. The kids adore Frenchie. One named Sophie even give him a friendship bracelet, which the bullies promptly snatch and mock. Frenchie firmly but kindly tells them to return it, but she's like, you can't tell me what to do, you're just a servant. And Frenchie / Maurice reminds her that even a servant knows to treat others with kindness. And remember our motto on this channel, if you can't be kind, at least don't be a dick, because you never know when a demon nun or an insane clown just running around might come back and get you. Maurice then gets the bracelet back and puts it on. Kate notices the interaction, and there's clear tension between her and Maurice. Next, a delivery girl arrives, but no one answers the door. However, it creaks open on its own. She puts the supplies away, but as she leaves, she hears someone kind of like choking in the hallway. It's Frenchie standing in a trance making disturbing noises. In the mirror, we see a glimpse of Valak, and this signifies to us that Valak is still inside him, a remnant from the first film when he was possessed at the end. Unfortunately for the girl, he transforms and kills her, but it's understood that it's Valak that has taken the wheel, and Maurice doesn't even know what's happening. He's kind of in a comatose state as this all transpires. Meanwhile, Sister Irene wakes suddenly from a nightmare. In the nightmare, Frenchie appeared to her, clearly possessed, pleading, "Save me, sister." When she wakes, she's told she has a visitor. A high-ranking church official tells her of a string of gruesome murders involving nuns and priests, starting in Romania and now spreading west. The fiery death of the priest from the beginning is one of them. Irene asks about Father Burke, but we're told he died of cholera off screen. Because of her past experiences, the Vatican wants her to help again. Initially, Irene refuses, but ultimately agrees. And oddly, Sister Deborah is also in the room and listening, despite her not holding any position of authority. I was like, why is she there? But anyways, the church tells Irene, you performed a miracle, we need another. And this kind of gets Sister Deborah's attention. So as Irene boards the train to begin her mission, she finds Deborah has followed her. Irene is like, what are you doing here? And they get into a conversation about faith. Basically, Deborah wants to witness a miracle so her faith can be restored. But Irene is like, the whole point of faith is, well, just that, having faith by just believing. So anyways, Irene is like, you're not ready to face what we're about to face because of your lack of faith. And Deborah is like, you need me, which I was like, not really. She doesn't need you at all, man. She got psychic powers and everything. But Irene was like, I just hope you can find your faith when the time comes. Foreshadowing much. Cut back to the school and the three girl bullies are about to try and fuck with Sophie. They trick her by inviting her to have some fun. They take her into the chapel, which is off limits, but they sneak in anyway, and it's creepy and everything is covered, and oh my god, one of the statues moves. Okay, so they're basically there to trick her into playing a game called Find the Devil. So while staring at the stained glass, depending on where you're standing and the way the light hits it, you might be able to see this goat's eyes light up, and if you look away, they say that the devil will see you, some BS like that. Confuses me because it's in a chapel, like a house of God. Why would that even be a thing there? But this clearly, again, is foreshadowing something for later. Anyways, while she's staring intently at the stained glass, the three sneak off. When the three leave, we hear a rumbling because fucking Valak's spirit is around. The light hits the glass, and once it passes through the goat's eyes, we can see Valak behind Sophie. Things then begin to shift and move, and Sophie grows more frightened. The statue that moved before appears to follow up and does so again, but it uses that walking trick they use in Annabelle Creation, that with each step taken, the sheet is falling, but this time, instead of completely disappearing when it falls off, it briefly shows Valak before turning back into the statue and breaking its head off. Luckily, Maurice shows up and lets her out. We then see Sister Irene and Deborah at the church where the priest was burned by Valak. The sister there says that they still hold mass, but no one shows up anymore because they think the place is cursed. Irene stands there and clearly feels a presence. She sees ash fall from above and then sees an image of the priest's burned body before a vision of the altar boy walks in and hands her the priest's rosary. They ask to see the father's room, and while they're looking around, they see a picture of Saint Lucy, who is the patron saint of the blind, who was lit on fire by pagans but wouldn't burn, so the pagans gouged her eyes out. And I'm sure that'll come back around in the story. They ask about the altar boy that was there though, and the sister's like, he no longer comes around. But she says that there was also a handyman there that night the priest was burned, but he left soon after it happened. But here's the kicker. He came from Romania, and this clue immediately lets Irene know it was Maurice. So cut to Sophie seeing Maurice, Frenchie suddenly stop in the yard paralyzed. Again, this is signaling to us that he's clearly possessed by Valak and under its control. At this point, Sophie hears her mom call her, but it's really just Valak fucking with her. So every time Frenchie goes into this little trance thing, that's Valak kind of breaking out a little bit. So Valak takes the form of Sophie's mom, leading her upstairs. Sophie follows the sound and vision of her mother up the stairs, and we see Valak close the door behind Sophie, getting her attention. Sophie then creeps towards it, opens it, and we see the Warrens' hallway with the nun at the end of it, which is interesting. It's tying together the Conjuring and the Annabelle movies into the mix. She runs away, but is stopped by Valak on the steps, who smiles at her all creepy-like before disappearing into the wall and such. Her real mom then appears and is like, "Where were you?" Cut back to Irene and Deborah trying to figure shit out. They're at a hotel where the hotel can't find the reservation, so Irene goes outside for a sec while she comes across some kids playing football. One of the kids is the altar boy, which she senses because she's psychic as fuck. She asks him some questions about the night the priest was on fire and ends up asking about the rosary that he took from the father. The kid then runs off. Irene chases after him, turns the corner, but then they all disappear and she's like, what the fuck? And also I'm like, what the fuck? Because I'm like, was that a hallucination or is Valak just making them disappear? Really, what the fuck's happening? Then we see a silhouette of the kid and he's running from her, and so she's chasing him, and now it's pretty clear that Valak is fucking with her. She finds herself alone in a dark alley and she sees some magazines turning all to different pictures and pages, but when they're all looked at together, it shows a silhouette of Valak, which is actually pretty cool. Suddenly though, the nun pops out of the image and grabs Irene by the throat, prompting her to see some images of the gouging of the eyes of Saint Lucy. Lucy then holds a case in front of Irene. Irene then passes out on the street under cover of darkness. Deborah is then shown finding her, screaming at the top of her lungs for help and that they need a doctor. Cut to the head mother or whatever of the school praying, and we see a picture of her son, Cedric, who died during the World War II bombings that hit parts of the chapel in the school, which is why it's sealed off in the first place. She then hears some noises and goes to investigate. She goes down to the chapel where the noises seem to be coming from, and she sees Maurice banging his head against the chapel doors, something that's done in the other Conjuring universe movies as well. His eyes are wide open, and when she startles him, he kind of jolts back awake, confused. She tells him to go back to his room, which he does. She then hears "Mama" come from the chapel, and the door kind of jolts. She hears a boy's laughter, presumably her son's, so she unlocks the chapel and goes in. While walking around, she eventually sees a mirage of her boy Cedric, all in his altar boy garb, before he proceeds to beat her with that dangly ash wavy thing that they carry down the aisle during church. She falls backward before a heavy hook falls on her head, killing her instantly. Flashback to Irene being checked by a doctor. She finally awakes, and Deborah asks her what happened the night before. Irene says she has a vision and thinks she knows what Valak wants, an ancient relic. Just like in The Nun Part 1, it was looking for the Holy Grail, now it's looking for another ancient relic, but it's using Maurice to get it, driving him across Europe, basically trying to find this thing along the way. Deborah says the altar boy actually came by, however, to give Sister Irene the priest's rosary. When they look at the rosary, the cross has an unknown symbol attached to it that Irene recognizes but can't place. But Deborah can. It was also on one of the other victims' rosaries. They share a symbol, a connection, a clue. So to find out what it means, however, they'll have to visit the Catholic archives and one of Irene's Catholic archive friends. Meanwhile, Sophie and Maurice are talking, and Sophie's like, Madam never went into the chapel, and that there's something wrong with the school, and that something doesn't feel right because they found her dead, you know? And Maurice asks her what had happened, if she saw something, anything, and she says no, which I'm like, bitch, you definitely saw something, tell him. Maurice is like, it's okay to be scared, and they have a nice friendly moment, and he convinces her to come back down because her mother's worried and never knows where her kid is. We then see the sisters on their way to the archives in France. Serendipitously, her friend, the archivist, has been speaking to the Vatican, who have told him that the demon of St. Carta has returned, sparking him to already have been doing research before their arrival. Well, that's convenient. So they show him the symbol on the rosary, and he says it's St. Lucy's family crest, and that the victims must all have been her descendants. So all these priests and nuns that Valak is killing across Europe are the descendants of St. Lucy. Irene then knows what it wants, St. Lucy's eyes, the holy relic St. Lucy's eyes. So after she was murdered, her family escaped and were hunted, but they were protecting the holy relic all along, the eyes of St. Lucy. So the demon wants a pair of eyes. And Deborah's like, why does a demon want a pair of eyes? And the priest is like, I'm just a librarian. It's a demon. Who knows? Which I found kind of funny and refreshing. But of course, he has a theory. And the theory is that the demon was once an angel rejected by God after its fall, stripped of its holy power, and it wants that power back. And it can get that power back through the eyes of St. Lucy. But just as Irene used the blood of Christ at St. Carta in the first Nun movie, they can use these eyes to send the demon back to hell. They're like, we just don't know where it is. And he's like, well, I might, because again, convenience. So this archivist has been cataloging relics, and if his findings are correct, they were buried somewhere in a monastery. When Irene asks if this monastery is still such a thing, the librarian is like, no, it was sold to a winery, but then became a boarding school. It's where Maurice is at. We've come full circle. So cut to the sisters in a car on their way to the boarding school where Maurice and Sophie are at. Irene then has a conversation with Deborah about remembering her mother, everything about her, that her mother was deeply religious and God showed her visions too, just like Irene sees. But her father didn't believe it and actually thought her mother was mad, insane, and heretical. So the father brought her to a doctor, but never brought her back. So she never saw her mother again. Back to Maurice and Sophie and Kate all having a nice evening together, dancing and listening to music and blah, 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 and having a nice little time and blah. So they're all having a good time, but then Maurice starts going into one of his little trance thingies and he starts falling over and coughing. Just then, Kate sees an upside down cross forming on the back of his neck. Maurice then looks up and sees a picture of Valak on the wall before it lunges at them. Then they all run away. So the sisters arrive at the same time that they're running away from the portrait. They end up bumping into each other in a hallway. Maurice is trying to warn them, but Sister Irene's like, no, you get away from them. And he's like, what? And so they're like, it's inside you, bro. And he's like, oh, no way, dude. And she's like, it got you when you came back to save me in the first Nun movie. And then he starts to transform. It like triggered Valak to come out. So Valak is now taking over and possessing Maurice full form before he raises his head up and is like, hello, sister, and then walks away. Irene tries to stop him, but is punched fucking hard into a window, like hard. Deborah then goes after and grabs him, but he flips her over. He's clearly going for the chapel now. Irene gets up though and commands the demon to leave the man with her rosary. Deborah then knocks him out. They tie him up and bind him with chains and ropes while they go try to find the eyes of St. Lucy in the monastery somewhere. They're like, what's in the chapel where he was going? So again, like Valak knew it was in there. I don't know why he waited so long to try to get Maurice to go in there. Maybe it's a power thing. I don't know. You know how it is. Plot holes and stuff. But they say they were looking for a relic. So they're like, how are they going to find it? And Sophie's like, well, I know this game about the stained glass, right? So convenient, so dumb, but you know, whatever. So she tells her about the glass, and if the sun shines through the window at a certain angle, it makes the goat's eyes glow red. It's basically the same way they find the holy relic in part 1 when Mother Mary points the way, because again, a light hits it in a certain way. It's nighttime, so they send Deborah outside on the other end to shine a flashlight through the stained glass. And just like, again, how Mary pointed the way, once it hits the goat's eyes in such a way, it sends like a laser pointer down onto the ground, and they move a carpet or whatever, and they start digging where the laser pointer point ends. Again, that's convenient, but it works, I guess, so they're digging. Flashback to Maurice's body, or more likely Valak at this point, and he's awakening, and it showed that Valak got out of the ropes and chains pretty fucking easily, apparently. So while they're digging, Sophie then looks back at the stained glass, and the goat that was on the stained glass is now gone. Uh-oh. Cut to the room of the other girls sleeping, and they hear noises above the bedroom and some walking around. Cut back to the digging, and they found the relic with the eyes in them. So they have now the relic of St. Lucy. Back to the girls checking out the noise. They send one girl out to see what's up. So she's creeping around, and she sees the stairs. They're black and creepy, and she sees Deborah from below. And she's like, someone's upstairs. Deborah looks around, and she sees a devil goat on the stairs. It's the demon, like a werewolf goat goat form, almost like Malthus, from the demon from Annabelle Creation. The girl says it's the devil, so it's taking the form of what they fear, right? And it's also taking the form of the devil goat on the stained glass. So they're locked in the room, but the demon starts throwing things around all telepathically like and throwing shit all over the walls. And I'm like, where are the other adults in this boarding school? Is it literally just Kate? Is it just Kate and the kids? So Maurice shows up in the chapel, however, all possessed, to take the sister out and grab the eyes. He beats her head around, lifts her, the eyes fall, Sophie picks him up and runs out. Valak then drops Sister Irene, and she's kind of like woozy for a minute. Sophie runs through the courtyard and into the wine cellar. Back to the girls, showing them running around. They're trying to hide from the goat devil thingy with Deborah. So again, this thing can separate itself into multiple presences at once, which is such a boss power to have. The goat demon devil is looking for them, stepping around. The girls then see the shaft from where they put the cockroaches through at the beginning of the film, and one of them is like, let me see if I can climb through it. So she does so quietly, but it leads into the head mother's old room, and once she's in there, she sees the corpse of the head mother with her back to them and roaches all crawling around the room. So she immediately like goes back into the room she came from before her head is grabbed and like pulled back into the shaft, and this makes Deborah scream, which I found funny and laughed out loud before she tries to help her. And they end up grabbing the kid and getting her, but the mother reverend boarding school lady's corpse is there, and she opens her mouth and out crawl all these roaches and stuff. It's pretty sick. Cut back to Sophie hiding in her special spot in the wine cellar, which Maurice already kind of knows, so Valak knows where she is. Valak tries to trick her like it's just Maurice, but we know better. Irene then is shown running after, trying to find them. Maurice looking for Sophie. Sophie is clutching the eyes, and the relic starts to glow, and this kind of tips off the demon. I guess it can sense it, and it lunges after her, but Sophie somehow uses it against her. We're then shown Deborah and the kids running away and out of the school hallway. Deborah separates from the kids and follows to where Irene is. They then all find themselves in the wine cellar. Irene is at the bottom and Sophie comes running down. She has the eyes. She hands it to Irene before Maurice Valak runs after her. And just before it gets to them, Irene holds it up like she's fucking activating it and stops the demon Valak in its tracks, and it's all growling and shit. Deborah comes in to witness this. Maurice says, "Sister, please, it's killing me," before passing out. And Sophie yells, "No!" Is it over though? Come on, no, that was way too easy. So Irene is looking at the eyes. Maurice is just laying there, eyes open. It's thought that he's dead. And Sophie starts to cry, but the demon grabs the relic and it starts to glow. It catches fire and Valak goes into super beast mode now that it has the power of St. Lucy's eyes. The girls and Kate are all hiding and she's like, "Where's Sophie?" Because she never knows where her fucking daughter is. But back to Deborah and Irene, and the nun starts to rise up in this mega form because she has the power of St. Lucy, and Irene looks upon her. The girls and Kate are walking through the hall, but the hall goes dark again, and the demon goat is back, and it's chasing them, and they all run away. Back to Valak. Irene raises her rosary against Valak, but it didn't work in part 1. It's not going to work in part 2. Valak sends a chain around Deborah's neck. Irene tries to help Deborah, but then is thrust telepathically into the air by Valak in a mockery of Jesus on the cross. Cut back to the girls trying to keep the goat at bay, and its horns go through and stab one of the students in the fucking shoulder. No mercy, I love it. The kids all scream and run away and back into the chapel. Irene is up in the air and Valak sets her on fucking fire. She starts to scream in agony. Valak smiles. Deborah screams. All is lost, eh? But then a vision. Irene, her mother, saying, "I will always be with you." Irene starts to see these flashes of Lorraine Warren and St. Lucy and of her mom, and then she all of a sudden ceases to be on fire. This confuses Valak, who launches things at them, but misses, hits barrels of wine, causing them to leak over and everything. Deborah's like, "Are you okay?" That was a miracle. So her faith has been restored. She's witnessed a miracle. The fact that Irene ceased to be on fire. So thusly, faith. They all notice the wine start leaking everywhere and around. They look at each other. Sophie screams. They're all trapped in a circle of spikes. Maurice comes out with a dagger-like thing. She screams for them to stop. Before stabbing Sophie, Maurice kind of breaks through and is holding Valak's power off just a bit. The sisters look at each other and Irene says, pray with me. They then touch the wine together and say, this is the cup of my blood. And we see more visions, and it's basically implying that Irene too is related to one of the descendants of Saint Lucy, which makes sense in the grand scheme of things because she's, and I think she's the cousin of Lorraine Warren. It hasn't been codified yet in canon, but I'm pretty sure they're cousins. But anyway, that makes sense why she has visions too in this universe, right? Her mom did, and she too is a descendant of Saint Lucy. Anyways, they're doing the prayer thing that, once finished will turn wine into the blood of Christ. And upon the word amen, all the wine barrels break and Valak is flooded with what is now, and again, like in part 1, the blood of Christ through transubstantiation and basically through faith alone, immediately disintegrating Valak. The kids are then all shown safe. Sophie is safe. Valak is shown burning. Maurice is shown screaming. The sisters put their hands on him to comfort him as Valak burns because they're connected. And Sophie runs to her mom and they hug. Maurice calms down a bit and then is like, sister, you saved me, which is what she said to him in part 1. Cut to them all walking out in the daylight. Maurice sees that his tomatoes are grown. Ah, what a nice omen. Then Sophie is like, hey, Maurice. And Maurice starts to cry and is like, I'm sorry, dude. And they're like, it's cool. But they all cry and start to hug. And then we're shown as they walk off, Maurice and Irene nodding to each other. And it's kind of like implies that Irene isn't too sure if Maurice is truly saved yet or not. And again, as we know from the films, he's not. He's still possessed. He's still got a little bit of Valak in him. The mid-credit scenes in this one, as there have been in others, shows a phone ringing, and it's for Mr. Warren. It's Father Gordon. He says there's an emergency, and Warren picks up. He's like, how can we help? Leading into more of the Conjuring verse movies. But then that's it. Okay, a couple things. I'll admit, I actually enjoyed this movie. I thought it was one of the more rare circumstances where the sequel is actually better than the first. Now, admittedly, plot-wise, it's the same fucking movie. Same plot. Valak is after a holy relic to gain power, to wreak havoc. You have the same protagonist, Sister Irene, and even Frenchie, and then an unnecessary third person, Sister Deborah in this one, because, they really don't need her, just like they really didn't need Father Burke in the first one. But they help a little, I guess, to fight off the demon and do some stuff. Anyways, again, like in the last one, Frenchie Maurice leaves still possessed with a little bit of Valak in him. We know this because of future Conjuring films. And it's basically almost a play-by-play, the same kind of thing. But I thought they did it better in this one. I feel the CGI was better, the scares are better, the whole story, even though they're spoon-feeding you and the breadcrumbs are so big, it's hard not to pick them up. That aside, I still liked it. I thought it was fun. There's nothing outrageously transformative in this movie. Like, what sticks with me the most is probably the magazine scene where all the pages flip to a certain picture, forming a full Valak kind of picture. But they use that in the trailer, so it's like such a waste. I hate when they do that. Overall, I think the demon looks fiercer in this one and definitely has more screen time. I think it's a fun movie despite a 4-year-old being able to follow along without ever having to question the plot. Still, the real value of The Nun is that it's real good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I said it. It's a step up from our ranking of The Nun, which was real mid in my humble but almighty and correct opinion. 2.5 Scaredy Cows for a nice, dreadful, black atmosphere, some good jump scares, and cool CGI effects that, in my opinion, hold up pretty well. Y'all tell me, what did you think of The Nun 2? Too cheesy? Too spelled out for you? It's definitely not elevated horror, but I enjoyed it. Let me know why you did or did not in the comments below. Okay, that's it for me today, folks. Remember, be nice to each other out there, and if you can't do that, at least don't be a dick. Peace. Woo, man. Thanks for not being quiet, the cat. Jeez. Yours is like Cleopatra.